In this lesson, we'll look at passing data between activities. In previous lessons, we've talked about using intents to pass data, but now we actually get to do it. If you're familiar with .NET Windows Forms programming, then you may be familiar with using a Forms properties to exchange data, or perhaps even a Forms constructor. Android doesn't support any of that. The most straightforward way of passing data is using intents. In this example, we're going to show two ways of doing this. Our first activity is a simple logon form that is shown at launch. We want to pass the logged in username to the main form after a successful login. This is the code for our form, and we have the usual edit text for the username and password, and the usual buttons for login and cancel. We create objects from our resources, and then we have the button clicks. Now on the cancel click, all we do is a finish, and that essentially closes the application as we've seen before. The login click, we create a new intent, and we pass it the type main activity, which is the form that we want to go to. On this intent, we call the method putExtra, and putExtra has two parameters. One is a key name and one is the value. So all we're doing is saying that we're going to put in extra data called username, and we're going to pass in the username text. And we'll start the activity passing it this new intent. So the main activity, when we get into the onCreate, we get the user ID from the intent that is passed in to the form, its extras, and we get the user ID. So that just takes the user ID that was passed in from our launch activity in the login click. And all we're going to do with that is set the text of a text view. Now, one login is surely not enough, so we have a second in this case. We want to show a login form and then have it return the username back to us. So we have a button to actually start a login activity, and we start it in basically the normal way, except we do it a little bit differently than the usual start activity that you've seen before. We're actually doing a start activity for result, passing in the login activity and a request code. And the request code just keeps different activities that we may have started in order. So that will start the second login activity, which has the same username, password, cancel in login button arrangement. And in this case, the cancel button will create a new intent and set the result to canceled, passing in this intent which hasn't had any data added to it, and then we finish the form, and that will pass control back to the main activity, but we will have said that the result was canceled. On a successful login click, we'll again create a new intent. This time we'll put extra data, a user, and pass in the username, and then we will set the result with the result OK and the intent, which does have data, and then we finish. So in both cases, that finish gives control back to the main activity. So in the main activity, there is an override for on activity result. First, we have the request code, which correlates to the request code of the activity that we started. We have a result code, and we have an intent. So the result code is that code that we set to either OK or canceled, and the intent is the intent that we put data into in the case where it's OK. So here I verify that my result code was OK, and that the intent does indeed have the user data. And if so, I just fill out this text view with the logged in username. Otherwise, we're just going to say that they canceled. And then we call the base for the override. We'll run this. Here's our first form. And you'll note that we didn't actually do any checking, so I can type in anything here. And when I log in, you can see that my text view is filled in with the username. So now we'll use our second super secret login. And again, a similar looking form. And another similar secret password. And we'll log in, and you can see that the second user was picked up as Bill, which was correct. Now we'll see what happens when we cancel. And we see indeed that that second user login was canceled. So this is how to use intents to pass data across activities. Now, passing objects is a little bit more difficult because intents aren't set up to pass objects. They're only set up to pass strings. So you can break up the object into separate string objects, which is a little bit clumsy, or you can actually use a local data store as one alternative. There are a number of other possibilities as well, but we're going to start moving into data stores, and we'll start off with a local data store in our next lesson.